Hello Redhawks, welcome to our Canvas update for fall 2024. In this video we are going to look at some of the bigger updates that took place during the summer of 2024. Many of them are smaller changes this time around, things that you may or may not have discovered on your own, but we want to make sure that you had all the information that you needed so as you work on your courses you know all the tools you have available to you. The first thing we want to look at is the ability to assign modules and pages. So if you've used Canvas, which many of you have, you know that when you had assignments and quizzes, you could assign those to individual students based off need. Canvas has now added the ability to do the same thing with modules and pages, essentially all of the things that you could potentially give a student through Canvas. So we're going to start by looking at how to assign a module. So I just went into my demo course. I'll scroll down here to the bottom where I have module 0. And here I put a couple things that maybe would be things that are useful to you. Maybe I have some enrichment activities, and only when students get to a certain point do I want them to access this, so I wouldn't add them to this module until it was time. Maybe I have a student with accommodations and they get a video of the lecture, but I only want it to be assigned to them specifically, or I have other accessibility or accommodation type materials that only go to certain students. I can put all those things into a module. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the More Options on the module name. Then I'm going to scroll down to Assign To, and you'll see that brings this slide out tray from the right hand side of the screen. This is a little different on the user interface side of things than what it looked like previously, but you'll see familiar Assign To. You can assign to everyone, or I can assign to just an individual. I click in the text box, and then I'll see the students in the course. I'll choose Rocky Redhawk as the person I want to assign this module to, and then I just click on Save, and now only that student has access to this module. I can obviously assign more than one if I ever need to manage that. See, I have a link here for View Assign To. I can open that up and see who that was assigned to. I can make changes. I can assign that to everyone at some point. This could be useful if maybe you want to open a module to somebody early for some reason, or maybe you want to make it available to somebody after maybe the module should have been closed or completed. It just gives you more flexibility of how you get information to students. So you see, once I've done that, I'll get this link that says View Assign To. This will allow me to go in and check to see who I assign this to. I can remove people. I could eventually open this module to everyone if I needed to. I could add more people to this module, so on and so forth. This could also be useful if maybe you have a module that is not open yet and somebody needs early access to it, or somebody needs access to the module after the fact. I could go ahead and just set up the settings so that I can assign it just to that one person. If I click on the More Options button and click Assign To for that individual item, you'll see that it says Inherited from Module 0, that only that student has access. I can also go to any item now, whether it's a quiz or an assignment, and see that Assign To button, still got that slide out tray, and I can make my edits. I can do it to a page, whereas before that was not an option to assign a page individually. Click on Assign To. This one is assigned to everyone from the 20th to the 23rd, but if I wanted to just assign it to an individual student, and I wanted to make it available to them from the 20th to the 27th, I can go ahead and assign it to just that one individual so that they have access for longer if I have a reason to do that. One other change for Assign To that I want to point out is when I go into anything that allows Assign To now, I'll see at the top I also have this button to go Assign To. So instead, before I would have to go to Edit, scroll down, change the settings. They've made it so I can easily go in and change those settings quickly with one press of the button at the top. The next change we want to look at is to discussions. The discussions redesign has been going on for a while now. I think it dates back probably 2+ years since they've started with some of the discussion redesign, and we've had it enabled for the time that it's been available. The big difference now is they officially enforced the redesign this summer as of July 20th. So basically all that means is we can't go back and set it to the old version, which for us wouldn't make any sense because we've had it this way for a while. So not everything in the redesign will look terribly new to you, but there are a few things worth pointing out, and we can talk about the features that we know for sure are going to stick. So the majority of the changes are to the discussions themselves. You'll notice at the top some buttons that look relatively familiar. You can search the entries for certain phrases, keywords by the author. You can view all messages or just unread messages. You can sort with the newest first or oldest first. We've had the ability to view inline or view in split screen for a while. So if you prefer split screen, I can click. I can go down and view the reply. It'll show me the original post with the reply that goes there. Some people like that view better. If you prefer the more traditional inline view, click on that, and then those won't show up anymore. The ability to expand all threads. So now if I click on this, I don't have to unthread every single reply to every single message. I can read it in a little more streamlined fashion. We'll discuss the summarize button in a different section of this video. And then finally, the assign to button, which we just looked at. You can assign the discussion to individuals as you see fit. Another change that's not terribly new, but if you do need to edit a discussion, you can go to the more options and click edit. Previously, a while back, there was a button there that you could click that is now underneath the more options button as well. Another item that is fairly new, if we scroll down, there's an example here. Users can now do an @ mention of who they're replying to specifically. So maybe within a thread, there's several replies, and you're replying and you want to specifically talk to person A. You can mention their name, so that makes it a little better for clarity purposes. Also, when you use this @ mention this way, it will notify the user that that's taken place, assuming that they have those notifications set in their settings, which goes back to the age-old problem of what do they have turned on and what do they not have turned on. But it will send them an email or a pop-up if they use the Canvas student app. It will tell them they've been mentioned. It will also provide them a link directly to where that mention's at, so they can just click on it and it will take them there. Also makes it a little more social media-like, which students are obviously more accustomed to using. The other thing you'll notice that you have the ability to do now, if we scroll back here at the top, is view history. Now, before we click in there, I do want to point out, if we go back to the discussions main page, and then I click on the settings icon in the upper right, I do need to make sure that I do have this option on, edit and delete their own replies. A lot of you maybe have that on already, and I've allowed them to edit for a while, but you won't be able to see any edit history if they don't have the ability to edit. So click out of there and go back to our discussion, and now I can see the history of what their discussions look like. So you see the original version, just a big wall of words. They changed it a little while later and just said, oops, realizing they must have made a mistake. And then they finally changed it back to a different wall of words as their final reply. So this can give you the ability to see how maybe they've increased or changed their reply over time. Maybe because they've read other replies and gone back and made edits. Maybe they've changed their viewpoints. Also, it does provide a little bit of control if you have your discussion set to require the students to reply before they can see what other students say. Some students figured out the quick workaround was just to type in a single letter, hit post, and then they could go read whatever was there, and then they could go back and edit their reply after they'd seen what other students had to say, which kind of takes away from the general spirit of discussions. We don't want them reiterating each other's concepts. Now you could go back and see that their first reply was blank or just some random letters, so they could see what everybody else had to say, and then they improved their post from there. So it does give you the ability to kind of check that out as well. One other item that's considered new within new discussions, but again, we've had for a while. But just to point out, in case maybe you haven't looked at discussions or used them for a while, when I create a discussion and I go down to options, I do have the ability to create anonymous discussions where I can hide names and profiles. Just know that if you do that, it can't be graded. It has to be completely anonymous. If you want a graded discussion, you have to be able to see the names, and you can click to allow graded. One other thing that has caused some problems and confusion due to some code issues from Canvas is the disallow threaded replies. During the update, they added some code that originally turned this option on and then locked it. They were able to go back through and unlock the option. However, a lot of them still defaulted to having this checked. Also, this wording is a little bit confusing because we have to confirm that we want to disallow. So we want to allow to disallow threaded replies. That's been discussed, and hopefully they'll update that wording maybe in the future. If you're watching this at a later date, this might already be changed. But I did want to point out that that's what that means if that confuses you a little bit. So if you want students to reply to each other, you want to leave that unchecked. I'm going to guess that's the case in the vast majority of instances. Also, if you have copied other courses, or if our students are not seeing a reply button when they go to do their discussion, it's likely this got turned on somehow. So you're going to want to go uncheck that, which will then update that option. Okay, the next thing we want to look at that is a recent update is the ability to put video comments on things when we grade them. So I'm going to go ahead and pick an assignment, and I'm going to go into Speed Grader. And you'll see there's no submission here, but that's okay. We don't need one for this. You have your normal information here. You can add your individual comments. You have your comment library that you could use if you've set that up. And before, we could attach a file, or we could do a speech recognition option. Now you have the option to record a video comment for the student. So we click there, take a second to load. You'll see the video's on. I'm going to turn this off for right now so we don't have to look at me. And then you can change your camera settings, your microphone settings. If you want to capture the screen, if you want to walk them through something in their assignment, you can do that. You could also upload media. Maybe you have some canned video files that you want to put in there just saying good job. You can attach those as comments now. That could be very useful if you're teaching a course that's remote. One thing we've heard from students is they sometimes don't feel a connection to their instructor. They don't even know what they look like or sound like because they don't see them on a regular basis. So this is a way to provide feedback that might humanize the course a little bit and make them feel some more connection to you. Obviously, it might be a little more time consuming to record those videos, but no more than if you're going to type out an extensive comment. Sometimes the video might actually be a better option. So that's a new feature that can be useful in a lot of ways, but especially in those online courses. Next thing we want to touch on are a couple of AI type features that Canvas has added. Both of these you will need to turn on. So we do not have them enabled at the top level, but we do have them enabled at the course level. So if you go down to your settings and then you go to feature options, you can scroll through and see one is discussion summary, which I do have turned on in this course currently. You'll see this X icon initially, but if you want to enable this, you can turn that on. And the other is the smart search option, which is down here. You can turn that on as well. So Smart Search will show up in your course navigation on the left-hand side, and it will show up when you come back. This is going to take a minute to load. And then I can go through and search the course by keyword. So maybe I don't know what happened to an assignment, or I know I had something that referenced a certain topic. I can put those things in, and it will search through the course itself looking for those items. They do have this button at the top that explains a little bit about how it works. So you can read through that, and you can see the searchable content includes pages, announcements, discussion prompts, assignment descriptions, and then there are plans to expand. So basically it's just making the course a little more searchable. This is a feature that's available to both you and your students. So if you want to enable it, make sure that you're aware of that. It just makes it so that if you want to find something in the course and you're not sure where it was, that you could find that a little bit easier. Again, completely up to you if you'd like to turn that option on. At this point, it is just a feature preview. Nothing has been forced into the on state yet. There has not been any communication from Canvas on if or when that will happen. If it does, then obviously we will notify you and let you know. The other option we had the choice to turn on was the discussion summary. So if we go back to discussions, which we were just in, click on our discussion that we had, and then there is this summarize button at the top. If I click summarize, it will come down here and load the discussion. Basically what will happen is it will look through the posts that have been made and give you a general summary of what's being said. You'll see that that's a feature that you may have noticed in a lot of social media platforms for comments that kind of summarizes. Not a replacement, obviously, to reading all of the discussion posts your students make within your course. But if you want to get a general idea, just quickly kind of what people are saying, what people are thinking, this is an option. And this one you'll see that it says that this discussion doesn't provide any real content as to whether cereal is considered a soup or not. It appears to be a stream of unrelated pop culture references and nonsensical text, which it was because I just used a bunch of random words that I have stored to fill in space when I'm making examples. So pretty accurate in this scenario. I have tested it in some other situations, and it does a decent job. It also allows for you to be able to look for problem areas. So you can look for biggest problem areas, things that students feel like they really understand. Again, just a small tool that you could use. It's probably not going to affect your course greatly. Also, this is available to you as the instructor, not to students. So there's no worry of them just popping in, looking at the summary and moving on. This is just for you. It would be an excellent tool to use for maybe a bell ringer or exit ticket type activity. If you're just trying to collect some quick information, you want them to type out, what do you understand, what you don't understand, what do you remember from last time. They could put that information in there. You could quickly hit the summary, read it, get a general idea. When you have more time, you could go through maybe and dig in a little bit more. But as we get more and more AI tools and AI focus, obviously all platforms are looking to add those tools in any way they can, and this is the first one that we have through Canvas. Again, same thing though, you can choose to turn this on. If you don't want to use this, by all means, leave it off. You have that choice on a course-by-course basis. Next thing we want to touch on is rubrics have undergone a little bit of a facelift, some redesign. They're doing this in multiple phases. The first one was basically making it a little more user-friendly. So you'll see when you click on rubrics, it looks a little different than it used to. You just have links to open each individual rubric. You can click on actions and have the ability to edit or duplicate. You can archive if it's an old one that you don't want cluttering up your main screen here. None of your abilities have changed. It will show you location used. By default, it gives you this basic courses and assignments because that's typically where these appear. If I click on that, it will tell me exactly what course it's in and what assignment it's attached to, so I can tell where that's being used, which that is new and helpful. If I click on an existing rubric, you'll see it gives me a preview of what the rubric will look like. One of the things that's different is you can choose to view it in the traditional format, which is what we see here, kind of how it's always looked. We can also change it to be a horizontal view, which will then squeeze everything down and make things horizontally, and then give us our buttons to score like that. Or we can look at it in a vertical view, which will then put the scoring like this with the notations next to it. Again, personal preference, however you want to view the rubric itself. Ability still to leave comments as before. So that hasn't changed a lot, other than you can just look at it a little bit differently. If I go in and edit a rubric, you'll see this looks a little different. Before, it just gave you a grid view, and then you had to type the information in there, and things had to go in a linear fashion. There wasn't really the ability to move or edit anything without completely scrapping things that you'd already done. This one gives you a little more option. So you can tell there's already one criteria here. I can go ahead and click on draft new. I can put the name with the description. I think before they called this like the long version and the short version. I can enable my point range. I can change my points here, name the rating, give the descriptions, delete. So the interface is just a little cleaner, and also I can move things around. Maybe I decided like maybe I typed things wrong. So instead of copy pasting, I can just simply move those descriptions around and put that to be 3 and that to be 2, change points as needed. It just gives you a little more ability to edit as you go, which is helpful. I can also create from outcomes still. So I'd go in, I'd find my outcomes. I just have some example ones loaded here, and then I could import it. You'll notice there is this lock here letting you know that this can't be edited. That is a little misleading because you can click over here on the edit button. You can change these things, but when you click save, nothing happens. So you can't adjust the point totals. That's so that it doesn't affect any outcome reporting, things like that we're looking at. But I think just to keep design the same, they leave those options. So if I created it, I could go in and edit. The button's still there, even though it doesn't do anything. Again, giving you the warning here, saying that it can't be edited. If I want to preview what it's going to look like, I can open up that preview again and see how it's going to display. If I'm not done, I can just save it as a draft. It'll let me know then on my rubrics page that this is a draft. I haven't officially saved it, so I have to go back in to edit and actually save the rubric, and then that draft pill goes away. There's not a huge amount of changes with rubrics other than it's a little easier to create them. The format looks a little bit better than it did before. Those are the big changes there. There are more changes in phase 2, the big one being able to use rubrics for student self-assessment and evaluation, so they can go through and grade themselves on a rubric and see kind of what they think. That's the one that we're waiting on supposedly by the end of this year, but no official date on that yet. Our last topic is really just a lot of small little items, workflow things, nothing that's going to necessarily affect your class, but features that have been enabled and created, so we wanted to point out. First one is if we go into our inbox and we go up to the settings icon, we'll see now that we have the ability to create an out-of-office reply as well as a signature. So we can turn these on. If I do know that, hey, I'm going to be gone for a couple of days for something, and I want students to know that, we do that with our Outlook, with our email, but we couldn't do that with our inbox before. Now we do have the ability to do that. Start end dates, subject with the message they'll see. And if we want to have a signature on our messages, we could add our signature just like we would in our regular email. So just a couple small things that they enabled to make the inbox a little more useful. Next thing, very small change, but a useful one. If we go back into our course and we scroll down to settings, the update course details button is now what they call a sticky button, meaning that no matter where we're at, we can save. Before, we had to remember to go all the way down to the bottom to click on that. I'm hoping they will add that in more places. The other one that often gets overlooked is when we change our navigation. That one is not sticky yet. You still have to scroll clear at the bottom. Hopefully they'll update that soon. Another small change that you'll notice is the publish button. So I'm going to go down here and find one of my unpublished courses. And you'll see up here in the upper right, you used to have a button that said publish and a separate one that said unpublish. That is all now under a single button. So you have to click the arrow and click if you want to publish that course. And then once the course is published and there's materials in the course, so we'll go back to our original course we were working in. You'll see that's completely gone because this course has interactions already because I had that discussion board example in here. So once there's content, you can't unpublish the course, so the button completely removes itself now once there's information there. If you publish and nothing's going on, there's no student interaction, you can still unpublish during that time. As soon as any content shows up from students, that publish button will go away. If we go to our courses and go to all courses, another small change that's very useful is these are now sortable columns. This term one seems to be the most useful. A lot of mine are just shell courses. I don't have things with terms, but you would see your fall and spring and summer from various years past. So you can go through, because sometimes those get scattered out and they get a little difficult to find what you're looking for. So that's a helpful small change that was made as well. The last item we want to discuss is the Canvas master template that is now applied to your course shells when they're created. This isn't brand new. This started back in the spring. It was applied before we rolled out all the courses with the year-round schedule. So all your courses for fall 24, spring 25, and summer 25 should have these items in the course. So the major change, the major thing you'll see now, instead of it just being completely blank, no modules, no information, there are 3 modules that are already set up for you that you can use at your convenience. The first one you'll see is a welcome start here. This is just meant to be kind of a placeholder if you don't have any sort of a welcome start here module already in your course. If you have one that you like and that you use, by all means, feel free to go ahead and remove this one and delete it. It's by default unpublished, so if you do forget, students aren't going to see it, but if you want it out of your way, you can get rid of it. If you don't have a welcome start here, then you can use this as a good starting point. Course overview and expectations. There's some placeholder text. You need to go in and edit that page. Student communication and notifications. There's a video there on how students can use those things and set that stuff up. Again, introduction and contact info. It's just got some placeholder text. You would need to update those as well. So don't just publish those and think that they're all set. Those are just there as, hey, these should be included in your course if they aren't already. If they are, by all means, then feel free to remove them. The one that is published by default is student resources. So it's just a bunch of links that live in other places, but just to make them as accessible to students as possible. There are things on academic services like the library, tutoring, testing, IT help, and then student support services that are offered. If you click those pages, there's links that take you to all those places that are listed there. Again, good resource for students to have, and if it's in every course, they know they can always go find it easily if they have trouble and need help from one of those sources. The last one is the faculty resources, which specifically says keep unpublished. This has tech assistance. There's information in here on accessibility and you do it, how to kind of get started with making your course more accessible, things you can do for pre-communication, and then information about the template, the things that we're kind of explaining here in the video. This one does need to remain unpublished because that's stuff for instructors, not for students. One thing to be aware of, if you do come up here and say publish all modules and items, that's an easy way to get them all published, but remember that will also publish the faculty resources. So you can turn that one on or turn all of them on and then go unpublish this one for yourself, but just be mindful that that one is there. So that's the big change. The other major change is we're trying to streamline the course navigation a little bit just to give students a similar experience. So when you open your shell before you import, you'll see that you should have home, announcements, simple syllabus, modules, grades, attendance plus, and you do it in lockdown, I believe, as your main top options. Now, obviously, you might have a reason to add different things to your course navigation, and that's fine. Maybe you need Zoom, or you use the discussions link. Maybe you have your publisher, Pearson link that needs to go there. By all means, add what you need to, but in an effort to try to streamline, we're asking that you keep these the same and then put anything else that you might need underneath that group. So at least students have the familiarity that the top few links are always going to be the same. When you import your course, what will happen is if you have adjusted your navigation in the past, that navigation from the course you're importing will override the template navigation. So you would need to go back through and make those adjustments there. If you've never touched navigation and you just kind of roll with whatever stock with Canvas to begin with, then it will default to the templates options. So one thing to kind of keep in mind with the master template. But those are the big changes. If you ever have questions on those, obviously feel free to ask. There are some other updates upcoming in quarter 3, quarter 4, and potentially the start of 2025. But those are all the big things that Canvas has made available and changed this year. Like I said, this year's been very much a focus on improving small things, improving some workflow, redesigning a few things that I've had a lot of requests asked for in the past. So that's why you don't see anything major here, but just to make you all aware of all the changes that have happened so that you can use Canvas to its best ability. As always, if you have questions or need help, contact anybody in